Stay tuned for an in-depth analysis of the 4-1-4-1 formation and find out exactly how this formation can work for you. So how is it set up? The 4-1-4-1 formation is set up with a back four, so a left back, two centre backs and a right back. You have a defensive midfielder who acts as the pivot and will screen in here and adds a defensive element to the midfield. Two eights, so two central midfielders who will have to work up and down, a right midfielder and a left midfielder as a flat four, and then you've got a lone striker up front. Okay, so when is the 4-1-4-1 most effective? It's most effective if you're a coach or a manager that wants to play with a firm defensive structure. You have that because you have your midfield three, you have a flat back four, and you have a compact midfield. So this defensive midfielder can screen in front of the back two, it can drop in if the fullbacks get caught here, out wide as well, and can just give you a really, really firm defensive structure. You can also transition really, really quickly to attack. So all formations are only a few yards away from being a different formation. So very, very quickly, a 4-1-4-1 becomes a 4-3-3. And those wide men, if they can transition really quickly, and you can get these midfielders to work really hard, when the ball turns over and we win the ball back here, these eights can push up, these wingers can push up from their wide positions, and then all of a sudden you've got a very, very strong attacking structure in a 4-3-3 model where you'll look for the fullbacks to get forward, the wingers to stay high, and the midfield three to control possession. So what formations is the 4-1-4-1 most effective against? 4-4-2 definitely, because you will only have a flat two midfield in there, so you'll be able to dominate midfield. That gives you a huge advantage in midfield with the 4-1-4-1. And so if you are playing against a 4-4-2, rather than going up 4-4-2 against them, think about going a 4-1-4-1 with wanting these wide players to get forward and support your lone striker in a 4-3-3 in attack. So first advantage is against a 4-4-2, you will have the extra midfielder. There should always be a spare man if he gets pressed. If they're both being pressed, your defensive midfielder is a spare man. If he presses here, then the space is here. The 4-1-4-1 is also really, really effective against a back three, so in a 3-5-2. Now this is really dependent on what the 3-5-2's wing backs are like. Okay, so if the 3-5-2 that you're playing against has wing backs that are struggling to get back, so they've pushed up the field and they're getting caught in these areas, your wide players can cause a 3-5-2 a lot of issues. Similarly with a 3-4-3, any formation with a back three, a 4-1-4-1 potentially should be able to cause them a lot of issues in these areas. So if you are playing against a 3-5-2 and you decide to go to a 4-1-4-1, you might lose a few battles here because the back three should be easily able to take care of the lone striker. But you want to be popping balls into these areas behind the wing backs. So the wing backs will push high. That leaves all of this space available. These centre defenders don't want to come into these areas. So if you do play the ball, pop the ball into there, we can get this player forward. That means he's got to come across there, or she. These players have got to shuffle across, which will leave an overload at the back stick for us to exploit. Okay, so a 3-5-2 is a really good formation to play against with a 4-1-4-1. When is the 4-1-4-1 least effective? Now, what can happen is that the lone striker presses, they're high up the pitch. If the back four haven't got out quickly enough, then the distance between these two players, the pivot midfielder and the striker, can be absolutely huge. If we get caught over in a turnover of possession in midfield, say the ball's been won back here, all of a sudden a team can counter-attack us at pace and we're in a lot of trouble. There's a lot of space in these areas that teams can hurt us with. So when we haven't got the ball in a 4-1-4-1, what we want to be really conscious of is the distance, just move these out of the way, is the distance between the pivot midfielder and our lone striker. That distance doesn't want to be too far. If anything, if this striker's running and pressing and it's hurting us, just ask them to screen so that four just becomes 2 banks of 4 with a pivot screen and a forward screen as well, and we're just stopping that ball come in, and then the opposite side will just have to keep playing from one side to the other, and they'll probably just switch and switch, and we can easily just adjust our shape again, screening the balls 1 into midfield and 2 into the striker, and that's going to get really, really frustrating for the opposition. They're just going to keep playing the ball and playing the ball, and at any level of football, they should give you the ball back at some point with really, really good defensive shape. So what do we do in a 4-1-4-1 out of possession? Now I've just touched on it there. What you want to really concentrate on, wherever the ball is, so say the ball here is at the opposition right back, we want to really concentrate on having 2 banks of 4, which are tucked across. So 2 banks of 4 will tuck right across. The pivot midfielder is screening the passes into the opposition striker, so they will be tucked across, and he's or she is really trying to screen the balls, a direct ball through to there, and stop that ball coming. Okay, their job is to patrol that area. The striker, you can either, depending on the opposition you're playing, how you want to play football, you can either ask them to really heavily press, but they're going to get tired really quickly in a lone roll, or you could ask them just to, again, shield that pass into the pivot midfielder of the opposition and screen. So you want 2 banks of 4, really important, and then the 2-1's job, so the pivot and the striker, their job is to screen that ball centrally, so to stop the passing lanes being available centrally to come through us. So that forces the opposition to look, they can't come here, so then they've got to come out and wide. If they just hit a direct ball to there, you would hope that that ball would take long enough that we can shift and shift and shift. The 2 banks of 4 are going to shift and shift, shift and shift. The opposition will come with us in these areas, and the 2 pivots to the pivot striker and the pivot midfielder will just shift that shape again, just to stop. When you hear about a low block or a mid block, this is a mid block here. The word block is really important. You are blocking the opposition progressing. You are stopping them playing forward. That is really, really important. So their only option is to come here, and then to turn and to come this way. And again, they're going to try and get here. That's the constant battle in football, is if you're out of possession, can you block them getting forward and shift and block them getting forward and shift and block them getting forward? Or if you have the ball, can you shift that ball quick enough to expose this side of the pitch to progress forwards? So really, really simple structure, an easy one for players to understand as well. So what is our shape in possession of the ball in a 4-1-4-1? As I said earlier, that the difference in formations is literally 10 yards sometimes, or 5 yards. Very, very quickly, it becomes a 4-3-3. The difference between a 4-1-4-1 and a 4-3-3 is not that different. It's just more how we set up out of possession. So in possession, I would suggest that you encourage your wingers to get forward and support this forward player, and you probably do morph into a 4-3-3 in possession, and you encourage your fullbacks to get nice and high. And really, like, you think about width and length of the football pitch, you want your striker to be nice and high, so you've got the length, and you want your fullbacks to be nice and wide, so you've got the width. So you're making the pitch really, really big, and it should make it easier to play within, because the opposition are going to try to be compact, like we looked at being compact out of possession. They're going to be compact, but this gives us a lot more space to play in. So if the opposition are compact and they're stopping us progress here, we can come out very quickly and progress on this side using the width that we have. So in possession with a 4-1-4-1, I would suggest the movements of fullbacks slightly higher, wingers higher and tucked in, and striker nice and high. That allows our midfielders to push high. The pivot midfielder does the same job, and we turn into a 4-3-3 essentially. Now if we do lose the ball in a bad area, say here, both wingers are caught and the ball gets popped into an area there, the pivot's job is just to drop in, makes a back 3, and it's really tough to progress then from that position. All we do at that point is just delay. We're just slowing the football down so players can get back in, the pivot midfielder can come back to their original spot, and the 8s can come back in, the wingers can get back in, and the striker can get back in, and we've got some shape back. Good, so that is the 4-1-4-1 in possession, in-game adjustments. The only in-game adjustments I'd probably look at with a 4-1-4-1 is just that 4-3-3 model. Just change it, interchange. Don't be scared of having a formation in possession and out of possession, and be able to switch between the two. Players should be comfortable with those instructions. But look, thanks for viewing. That's a 4-1-4-1 analysis, bit of a deep dive. Let us know what you think in the comments. And please share, like and follow. Thank you.